a whole. Um, all growing up, I wanted to be a veterinarian and work with animals because I loved animals. But I think something, even looking back now, I always, anything that I would hear in church or anytime I'd have a group of friends together, like at my house, I was always talking to them about God or whatever I would hear at church. So that was a really big thing for me. And I even remember telling a story that my pastor told one time when I was 9 because I thought it was so cool and my friends didn't get it. And so I had a bunch of friends over at my house and I wanted to tell them the story that my pastor told me. And I remember being a little disappointed that nobody else got as excited as I did about it. But so all throughout that, my growing up, I think I really started to develop a passion to talk to people about God, just because I would get excited when I would learn things like, oh man, it means so much to me, so I want to go out and tell everybody else about it. So when I was about my senior year of high school, kind of first year of college, I felt like God had called me into ministry. And it was really around the time that I started walking with Him. I accepted Christ when I was younger, but I didn't really know how to have a relationship with Him. I was never really discipled in that area. So around the time that I started learning how to have a real relationship with the Lord, I started feeling called into ministry. So in praying about what that looked like, I really felt like I wanted to go into some form of counseling. And I didn't even know that Christian counseling existed. My tentative plan was to go to UGA and study psychology and then go to seminary. And then I really didn't know what I was going to do after that. So it's kind of funny that there's actually an entire field already dedicated towards this. So I really felt like that was what God was calling me into. And I think that came out of some experiences with my family members, dealing with my mom, and she's gone through a lot in her life, and just seeing how that has affected me and the rest of our family. I think I kind of saw the need for counseling just as a part of really being able to live the Christian life, really being able to be honest about the things that we're struggling with ourselves and then with God, and really having that be able to unlock a really deeper relationship to God. So I really pursued that very hard. Found out a year later, started praying. I went to a community college my first year and started praying about where do I go to school, and God kind of brought a man at the church into my life that just kept talking to me about this one Christian college and how his daughter went there, and every time he'd see me, he'd talk to me about that college. And I had never even heard of it, but after a couple times of seeing this man, I was just like, okay, God, I'm gonna go to this school. I had never even seen the school, but it's like, all right, it's just, you keep telling me about it. So I went there. And they had, it was a Christian college, so I studied Bible and theology and psychology. And it was an amazing experience, and I just totally threw myself into it. I loved it, and my relationship with God deepened because of it, because I think I started to learn the truth about a lot of my upbringing and my family situations, and I think that really helped unlock me being able to relate to God, and me just really being sane all around. So, and I threw myself into ministry there too. I worked with kids in town, mentoring them and tutoring them after school. And then I was on evangelism team in college. And I came home for 2 summers. I was on staff with my church and worked with the youth. So I got the opportunity to write Bible studies for them and lead small groups, disciple girls, run summer camps. And so my whole focus of my entire life was ministry. And it was just kind of without a question, there was no question in my mind, I'm going into ministry. I even said in college, I want to do full-time ministry because at the end of my life, nothing else is really going to be worth my time, especially business. I just thought, companies, businesses need to be run. I live, in in a country where that's a great thing, but I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I didn't care. I didn't think working in the business world had any eternal value. So that was kind of my standpoint on all of it. And and my dad actually makes a lot of fun of me about that now because it's exactly where I'm at. But going through that process, I always thought, you know, my dream was to go on and get my master's or PhD in psychology. And I wanted to go on and have a private practice and be a writer and eventually a professor. And so I had a lot of big dreams in that area, and I even got scholarships from my school. I was counseling major of the year my junior year, and everybody knew I was just all about this, being a part of ministry. So I went to grad school and racked up a lot of student loan debt and was full-time for 3 semesters getting my master's in counseling, and just, I mean, I could try to give a spiritual version of what happened, but I basically freaked out at the idea of listening to people's problems every day for like 8 hours a day for the rest of my life. And I told God, you know, I've thought for a long time that I'm going to do this. I cannot do this. You have to come up with some kind of plan B for me now, because this is just not going to fly. I had a couple internships and had the opportunity to counsel, which was awesome. I mean, I even got a lot out of it, but just in terms of doing it for the rest of my life, no, I hit a brick wall with that. And around the same time, a staffing agency that I had worked for back in college called me up and said they needed some help. They needed some help interviewing and placing people in jobs. And so while I was still in grad school, I took that and was working there part-time, and that was actually when I took that job, it was my last full-time semester going to school to be a counselor. I took a job as a recruiter there after working there for a couple months, and then dropped down to part-time status, getting my master's degree. And then really just as I got further into the job, I had a lady that mentored me in the business, and she put me into a sales position. And that was probably about 4 years ago now. And so that's what I've done. I'm in sales, and I never, ever thought I would be in sales. What I do now is I work for an IT company, and I sell service contracts on hardware in the enterprise content management field. So it's very exciting stuff. But it's definitely a totally different direction than what I ever thought I would be in. It makes a lot of sense. I've always been one that has wanted to meet people and loves talking to people, and I love, if I get into something, I want to tell everybody about it and kind of sell people on it. So it makes a lot of sense that I'm at where I'm at. It is totally different than what I studied, which sometimes is a challenge because I work around a lot of people that are very familiar with hardware and software in IT. And they do what I call geek it out. And they start talking about stuff that is just so off in left field from anything that I've ever known. And that's okay. I mean, there is a daily reliance on me when I walk for, this job, for me to rely on God. When I walk into appointments to try to sell IT managers on my services, I just, my thought process is, okay, God, you have to take over this. You have to do this through me. I don't know what I'm talking about. What if they bring up, XYZ software and whatever they're using and how that relates to what I'm selling? I have no idea what I'm going to say to them. And, all this whole dialogue with God runs through my head. And then I just walk into the room and stick out my hand and look him in the eye. And, I put on my confident face. And I truly am, I think going through that whole dialogue is what gives me confidence to be able to do all that. But, I think in terms of my path and where I'm going,